Hello, world, and welcome to Beamstream. So, on episode 3 of the podcast, we are joined with Honor, who is just starting out as a developer and is currently a developer. Honor, say hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Beam. Good to be here.
No worries at all. So I guess just getting straight into it, um, what is your educational background and how has that made you kind of transition into development?
So I actually studied law at university, and which is obviously, completely different from computer science and web development or whatever. But I really enjoyed it, but sort of as a career choice, I thought it wasn't sort of the most appropriate for me. So after graduating, um, I sort of started focusing more on like tech stuff, but for my educational background, it was law for 3 years.
Cool. Um, I guess what made you actually look into development in the first place? What made you say law wasn't right for me and development suits me more?
It was always the people that I surrounded myself with. I mean, obviously uni, I met you there. There was a lot of friends from computer science, the like mutual friends that we both have. But even back in secondary school, a good friend of mine, Mert, he was really into like computer science. Sort of like at the time, he was doing like really basic like web development stuff. But just having that exposure at like the age of 13 or 14 or whatever it was, it fascinated me then as well. I remember one morning, like we were just waiting for school to start, and we were in the library, and he just opens up Notepad, does the doc type HTML declaration, puts like a H1 on the page, and then opens on like Internet Explorer. And even that, like I remember it to this day, even that was like kind of blew my mind. So I've always had this awareness of it from like the people around me, and I was always interested in it from that. I knew what it could do, what it was like. So yeah, so just mainly thanks to my friends, yeah.
Right. So clearly there's a strong influence on those around you, essentially.
Mm.
But what made the push to essentially say, you know what, I'm just gonna take the risk? Like, what was going through your mind as you were thinking, you know what, like I've finished this degree, but maybe I need to find something else.
So I think it's sort of two parts to that question. One half of it would be the oversaturation of like candidates in law. A lot of people are doing it, a lot of people that are really, really clever and just like have so much experience. That kind of pushed me away from law. But the reason why I gravitated towards, development is just because um, like I said, just always having that interest of it. I mean, even for uni, my original choice was computer science, but because of my maths grade wasn't quite good enough, I couldn't do it. But I mean, it worked out in the end anyway. But for uni, yeah, I couldn't do that, so I had to do law. So it was always an option that I was considering. Um, and so yeah, it was mainly just sort of I always had it as a plan B, basically, even before I started uni while I was applying. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know that you did apply to computer science.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting. That's the
Yeah.
first for me. Cool. Yeah. I mean, so that's cool. So I mean, it's clearly a big risk, and with
Mm.
risk comes whether you saw viability or you were in a place to take that risk. I mean, financially speaking, or even, how you are with your family and stuff like that. Did those factors make, did those factors influence your decision? Or,
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, I was in a very, very fortunate situation because I'm living with my parents, so I could depend on them and rely on them. I had sort of a few part-time jobs here and there after graduating to just kind of help out a little bit, but even those I didn't need to have. So I was definitely I could you know say I'm going to take some time for myself, teach myself these things, develop myself, which is, like I said, a very fortunate position to be in. That definitely also played a part, sort of knowing that I could afford to do that. So yeah, for sure, like that definitely played a part, definitely.
Cool. Yeah. And I guess this kind of transitions into your professional career and, transitioning towards that point. So essentially, I wanted to ask, what were the steps you had to take to get up to the point where you are now?
Well, I will say it was a long journey. It didn't happen like, in a few weeks or whatever. So like I had zero experience, literally nothing. Um, Again, like I said, I was always fascinated by it. I saw people do it, but I hadn't actually done any myself up until like after graduating when I started to take it seriously. So the first step literally was just learning the basics. Just knowing, like learning how it works at a very, very basic sort of beginner level. And then just taking it from there. You just understand how it works. And then once you understand how it works, you just begin to apply it very, very slowly. And then over time, you get more confident and you just kind of, for me, it was even when I first started, the end goal was to prepare a portfolio of projects that I can show to employers and tell them I might not have a degree, but I do have this to show you that I can code and that I understand, good coding practices or whatever it might be. So that was always the end goal for me. Teach yourself whatever it is you need to teach yourself so that you can make this. So it was nice having that end goal in mind as a sort of driving force. Whenever I would reach a point of I don't know what to do, I would just sort of remind myself, okay, if that's the end goal, what steps do I need to take to reach there? Um, so yeah, that was the main reason, yeah.
Cool. And what sort of resources did you use to kind of familiarize yourself or even train yourself? Or rather, did you go through any formal training of any sort?
No, so I didn't have any formal training, and I'm quite grateful for the fact that in terms of resources, I used a little bit of everything, whether it's like, reading articles or like threads or like watching YouTube videos or even buying Udemy courses. Just anything that you can get your hands of that is like conducive to your like learning methods, whether you're a visual learner, like an auditory learner or whatever it might be, just understanding what works best for you and just like using that. So for me, it was honestly like a little bit of everything. I would watch videos, read a lot as well. I think I bought a few Udemy courses that were on offer as well. Um, just a little bit of everything. Um, but again, like there are so many resources out there. Um, it's a really sort of beautiful day and age to be in to learn like coding and development because there are so many resources out there to use. Um, Off the top of my head, I can't specifically remember which ones, but um, yeah, there's a lot out there for sure.
So it sounds like you're more of a visual learner, I guess, with the the courses that you bought from Udemy.
Mm.
Um, do you think well, in terms of the learning process, being a visual learner, was it easier or harder to kind of visualize programming concepts when you were learning them early on, or
Um, in terms of visualizing, I think I got a bit lucky in that regard. I don't know. Maybe it was just the resources that I happened upon, or maybe I can give myself some credit, but like they were explained generally quite well to me. So something like object-oriented programming, that's quite a fundamental process. Like just the theme. Like there was this one Java course that I think, yeah, to learn object-oriented programming, I was like watching this Java course, and it was quite like a senior developer that had developed the course, and he like explained these really complicated like ideas and processes like really well. So that I would say also plays a part, like finding so as much as you can, find something that suits you or like whatever it might be, you do kind of have to rely on like a good, I suppose, like instructor or like a good piece of work anyway to like absorb from. So I guess that does play a role as well. Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Cool. Yeah, no worries. So I guess this training period that you were at what point could you basically just say, all right, I think I'm ready to start, looking in the market, trying to see what's there and trying to gauge myself against others, right? What was the point that you felt comfortable?
For me, it was quite a late point because I think I was just dealing with a lot of like, I suppose, anxiety, or I think what's the term they use for like coders, where you feel like an intruder or like you'd feel like you don't
Imposter
belong.
syndrome, right?
That's it. That's the one. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there was a lot of that sort of going around. So I kind of waited until my portfolio had like a good number of projects on it. I think between 8 or 10 projects, like even if they were small or big or whatever, like a good number that I can show. So instead of like one or two really big ones, it was a lot of smaller, medium-sized ones. So I had to wait until that point. I think I had like a job for a little while as like an IT consultant as well, which is not development at all. It's basically just tech support in a way. I sort of felt a lot better after I could put that as well, just something in the tech industry. Um, if I'm being honest, it ultimately, I'm fairly certain it didn't play a role in me getting like a developer job, but just having it there made me feel a bit more confident in applying as well. So for me, it was definitely like I felt like I had to prove myself a bit more because of the absence of that degree. So it did take a while for me personally to reach that position, but yeah, got there eventually.
And do you have about like an estimate of how long you thought, at what point, like how long did it take to be comfortable while you were training?
Um, there was a bit of staggering in terms of there was a while where I wasn't learning because of like jobs or like just personal reasons. But all in all, I think it took between 6 and 8 months um, in total, which yeah, it's like not too bad.
That is not too bad at all, actually. That's actually quite impressive. I know some others who have taken a bit longer than that. So yeah,
Mm,
definitely props to you on that.
thank you.
Um, so I guess so I guess moving on to your your professional background now. What was the sort of or yeah, like what were the sort of roles that you have been in, or if it's your first role, what's your first role?
So yeah, like I said, I had one role as an IT consultant, which was just tech support effectively. So that was my foot in the door in the tech world. But then I was like, I'm not quite happy with this. I do want to do development. So then I think that was at the point where I think I left that job and then I like full time was working on my portfolio. Um, and then I started applying. I think this was in the during the pandemic as well. I just started applying for junior positions, and then I got a role as a junior full stack developer at an agency in Manchester. So that was my first sort of role. Yeah, it was a small agency, I think about 20 people, and I was working with one other developer. And she was amazing. I couldn't ask for a better like first role because she was really, really awesome. But yeah, that was I will also say it took a lot of applications, like a stupid amount, in the triple digits, like easily. Um, so yeah, there were definitely like I had to like figure out a whole system where like to not get burned out or like to not get too demotivated because it was a really like it tests your patience a lot and your character to not give up and to just keep trying. Especially when you have like when you do get interviews. Another thing I will say is like the thing I mentioned about having people in the industry, for example, yourself or the other friends that do computer science. I don't know if you remember, you actually looked at my CV and you gave me suggestions. Having that as well, because after you gave me those suggestions, I started hearing back so much more from people as well.
It's good
So
to
that
hear.
also, yeah, that also played a massive role, like having those connections, having those friends. Um, so yeah, you helped me get my first job, so thank you.
No worries at all, and thanks for being here in general, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
So that's actually really inspiring in a way that, to get up to applying in three-digit numbers is not an easy task, especially with burnout, with applications, especially, I mean, it can definitely affect your mental, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Um, like the thing is, how did you kind of basically cope to say, you know what, it's definitely not me, it's the current market? Like, what made you think anyway, in that sense?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. I think I'm a bit more like hard-headed, I suppose I could say. I'm able to just sort of like keep my head down and just keep going. I know a lot of other people might not be able to do that, so that is something that I'm quite happy about myself. Um, Even if I would like hear, three rejections in a week, I would still just like, I'll say, okay, I'm gonna take the next few days off to just kind of wind down, just sort of, yeah, do whatever I need to do, and then just get back on it when I'm feeling better. I think each person probably does have to figure out their own kind of like coping system. But again, that takes time, and that's okay as well. Like, go at your own pace, figure out what works for you. Um, yeah, for me, it was just like just spending time with my friends and family, eating good food. Um, yeah, it's just yeah, playing games.
And I guess, so let's say you were on your first day at work. How was that whole experience? I like, was there a pretty steep learning curve with, joining your first professional role, or was it all okay?
So I will say, to answer the first point, my first day was like just electric. I was so excited, like to officially be able to say that like I am a developer. Like I've never felt that before. Like it just felt so amazing, and I felt so proud of myself. In terms of a learning curve, for me, it was not that steep. Um, it was so that company they work with like WordPress. So the only initial problems I had was just like setting up local environment stuff, which like at a beginner level you wouldn't be expected to understand anyway. And my senior developer walked me through that entire thing. And when it came to the actual like doing the work, it was again like it wasn't anything different from what I had been doing with my like projects. Um, there were like smaller stuff that I would need to learn and like pick up. But again, my senior developer, who was amazing, like would walk me through everything. If I needed to read up on something, she would send me like documentation on it or like resources. Um, but it wasn't anything that like I felt like, oh, I'm way out of my element here. I think I would also say that like the 6 to 8 months that I spent like teaching myself, that also builds character and teaches you lessons. You you sort of learn to learn, basically. You learn to figure things out. If you don't know something, you teach yourself to learn it. Okay, so what's gone wrong here? What sort of paths can I take to figure this out? So that was also something I figured out and that I could apply to this role. I think that was also one of the reasons I think in my interview I brought that up, and I think that was a draw to them. They were like, okay, yeah, because this is obviously like a strong sort of characteristic to have, especially at like a busier agency when like the senior developer might not be able to always help you all the time, and like they want you to kind of be a bit independent at times. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I think you definitely have most of the traits of basically high flying it, right?
Mm,
Because what I found is that a lot of juniors have a really high learning curve, but then, they sort of get overwhelmed and don't take the proper steps to take initiative, right?
yeah,
And, you don't have to know everything. Sometimes
yeah,
it's worth asking for help, but, you need to make sure that everything is good on your side as well,
mm,
before you take that step, right?
for sure.
Um, so as in, in terms of, so how long in that role did you feel like, all right, I have a pace, I have a good pace, and I can do my job comfortably? Did you ever feel like you were at that point, or?
Definitely. I think I hit it quite fast as well. I'd say maybe like 2 to 3 months in, I was just like steady.
Cool.
Um, it was really good. Um, I think, there would be the odd thing maybe here and there, but I think that always happens in tech, right? There's always something that like you're learning or doing differently. Um, but even that stuff, like I wouldn't have any trouble sort of, and by the next week I would have become comfortable with it. But honestly, yeah, after like, and I think that was the 2 to 3 months was more so just because it was my first job and just because it's, completely new people, it's a completely new job, regardless of whether it's like law or tech or whatever. So you just get used to the workflow, you get used to like, the processes and the work itself. Um, and it helped that the people were really nice as well. But yeah.
Which is what I was going to ask about next. You know, oftentimes in smaller companies, especially, it's kind of hard to find a mentorship, right?
Mm.
Did you feel like you got all the support you needed to basically progress, or
I think so. I'm on my second tech job right now. For both this one and my first one, shout out to Ruth. I don't know if you would ever listen to this, but she was my first mentor. And like I said, I couldn't have asked for a better first mentor. Maybe it was partly because it was like quite one to one because it was just us two. But she was just brilliant. Like even she was so like gentle and patient and kind, but also really, really clever herself. So like she had a lot of knowledge to pass down. Um, and yeah, even in my current job as well, like the people, the developers are just brilliant. Like they're not only brilliant, but they're really just like kind and patient. Again, I think I've gotten really lucky for both my roles because I also have also heard like stories about devs just being like dicks basically, but for both my roles, the people have been amazing, and I feel really fortunate about that as well because I know it can play a big sort of it can have an influence on you just going forward. So yeah, it's good.
having said that though, have you ever gone through any issues or problems in the workplace, or just in general, have you had any issues for yourself? Um, yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah, just in general, like maybe just throughout your professional life, did you
Hmm.
feel like, it's a bit out of your depth or you're just having issues in general?
Um, I think it does happen, but I think it's going to happen to anyone regardless. But I think what's important is kind of anchoring yourself and just knowing when to speak to someone or when to ask for help, just when to sort of communicate really like that there is some issue happening. I think that's the most important thing to just not like burden that, like just carry it with you. Um, yeah, it's gonna happen whether you like it or not, but just, be kind to yourself, speak to someone about it, get it off your chest, and just figure out how to like fix it, find a solution with the people around you, whether that's with your boss, the person you're directly working with, whether it's with like HR. Just speak to someone because people out there like some people can be mean, but there are also people out there that do want to help. You just have to find them.
Cool. Yeah. Those are really great answers for the most part. I mean, so having said that, with your second role, rather, how long did you stay in your first role? And then, at what point did you say, I kind of want to move on, from that point?
So my first role, I was there for, I believe, approximately 8 or 9 months. And then there was a bit of a situation where um, they wanted me to like relocate, and that was the original agreement, but for like personal reasons, I couldn't. So I had to sort of part ways with them. But even before my notice period ended, I was able to land my second job, which just goes to show how much having some experience like can help. Um, but yeah, so I think it was about 8 or 9 months. Yeah.
Cool. And were the technology stacks vastly different from each other, or were they the same?
So both were like are using PHP, but the first company was with WordPress, and the second company is with Magento.
Cool, cool. And how are you finding Magento and PHP in general?
PHP is good. I hear a lot of people giving it shit on the internet, but like for like modern day use, like in this day and age, it's actually really, really flexible and really powerful. And I'm a fan personally. And Magento was is a beast. It's quite a behemoth, but it's also again really powerful. And I think like a lot of the web is using it, and I think there's a reason for that. But for this current position, interestingly, it was when I applied, it was for like a graduate front end developer. And so as part of that, this company that I'm with, ACO, who are brilliant, by the way, shout out to ACO. They're doing like a grad scheme. So it's like completely sort of internal in-house. They've developed themselves. I mean, this company's not that much bigger than my first company. I think this one's like 50 or so people, 50, 60. And so the developers here, like they've created their own grad scheme where they basically assume you have no knowledge of Magento, some knowledge like development knowledge, but no knowledge of Magento, and they just build you up across 6 months. And by at the end of the 6 months, you graduate, and then you just get started on the work. So that's what I've done at this company, and now I think about 9 or 10 months in, if I'm counting correctly, and it's going great.
Nice. That's really good to hear. So I guess I would assume you would classify yourself as currently a junior, right?
Yeah.
Um, cool. Yeah. So I guess as a junior, you know, what are your goals for the next phase in your career, essentially?
Um, so as of now, right now I'm just kind of um I know a lot of people like in their tech career they're like bouncing from job to job, like, get the pay rise, like get the build up the CV or whatever it might be. I think for me, and this is something we talk about at work as well, like we have these open discussions where it's really healthy and nice. For me, it's just like I just at this point my primary concern is just developing my skill set and just learning as much as I can. I want to get to a point where, you know, just I sort of feel, I don't know if proud is the right word, but like satisfied with my skill set and I'm happy with where I am. Because there is not only just for Magento, but just like in general, there's so much to learn. Um, and yeah, and just with that, you can just figure out what you like, what you don't like, which might affect the route you go down, like in terms of your career. Just learning, just getting good.
And what
Yeah.
side do you think you feel like you're heading towards? More back end, more front end, or
Um, so right now I'm doing front end stuff, which I'm enjoying a lot for the most part. My exposure to like Magento backend is like it's interesting to me, but like it does look a bit nightmarish. But I before like my exposure to Magento backend, backend did was like a viable option for me. But like we said before, like I'm a lot more of a visual learner, right? I kind of need visuals. So for me, like front end does make a lot of sense, like just for the way I work, the way I learn, the way I process information. For me, front end it's going well so far, but I mean, I'm always open to kind of learning new things. Like if some front end tasks pop up or whatever, and there's something there, like I'm happy to pick that up.
cool. And I guess your company does use Git and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
I've always wanted to ask, junior developers in general about their process and, you know, some juniors essentially don't understand the concept of testing, unit
right.
testing and integration testing. Have you come across a process within your development where you have to write tests? Do you write tests at the moment? Or
No. I think we do testing, but I haven't written any myself. Um, yeah, not yet anyway. I don't know. I don't know if that's something we do, but I mean, I going through our code base, I see some test stuff popping up, and I haven't actually asked what that's about, and they haven't taught us in the grad scheme, so I don't know. Maybe in the future though. But during like my like interviewing, when I was like interviewing and like preparing for the roles, I know that is like a big thing that you do have to learn about. Not even learn about, just like have an awareness of. So that was something that I did study on and learn about, like the different testing approaches and why that's valuable to a company. So I think just as a sort of general advice to anyone who might be doing that, it is useful to know and to just you don't have to like memorize all the different things, but just understand why it's important and why it's good. just in case it does come up in an interview, like being able to explain that it does like reflect really, really nicely
Cool. Yeah.
for testing specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, I guess testing does have an initial high overhead to kind of get used to, and most of all to actually show value in it, because
Right.
early developers usually don't see the value in it. um, but yeah, no, this so I guess just digging deep into, you know, um, so at the moment, I guess your priority is purely learning as much as you can, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, are you sort of doing anything within your own time to kind of um, you know, do something different than your current role, or are you fully focused essentially on your career?
Yeah, right now, for my initial first job, I was doing some stuff on the side, just because I think like I had the I suppose I want to say like bandwidth for it, but for my current job, like Magento is a lot more like there's a lot more going on, and the agency is a bit bigger as well, so the day to day is a lot more like compact. So I don't have as much sort of bandwidth outside to do that kind of stuff. But Magento definitely is keeping me like engaged enough anyway, so I don't feel quite as much of that scratch to like do things outside. Because I'm learning so much like every day. Even after I've done the grad scheme and I've been working as a junior for like however many months, I'm still learning so much like every day. Even like today, like so much new stuff is just going on, and it's exciting.
Yeah, and I guess as you transition, more towards your career, what's the point that you basically will feel like I'm a mid-level developer and I can say that confidently? What do you feel is the point you think you can reach?
That's a really good question because I don't exactly know the answer. I'm hoping it's just one of those ones where in time it kind of will come to me. I think I am that kind of person as well, where I just kind of feel things. Um, so yeah, I mean, ultimately, like I would need to sort of be happy with where I am in terms of my knowledge, which I would assume be like, in a maybe a year or two, or maybe longer, who knows, or maybe a few months. I don't know, but I would need to be sort of satisfied with where I am, or maybe I'll be like, oh, I'm bored of Magento and I want to do something else, and I'll start applying for like middle sort of not junior positions, but not quite senior positions, just middle positions, and just kind of take it from there. Who knows? We'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. Um, I guess as as a transitioning kind of developer. Well, you are a developer now,
Mhm.
but before that, when it came to the numbers game of applying to so many jobs, what was the ultimate pattern you saw for all those rejections? Was it the formal education or?
That definitely played a role. I had um, a good few like interviews, whether it was at the initial phone call interview, whether it was, at the technical interview, or like whether it was I passed the phone call interview, the technical interview, and the very, very end when like they need approval from the manager or whatever it might be. Um, but they see that I don't have a degree in computer science. It did factor in, definitely. Um, but again, you just have to not let it get you down. But you do notice it for sure. Some companies, even in the description of the job application, they will specifically say, like we want a comp sci degree, minimum 2-1, which is fair enough. That's okay. But yeah, you just have to apply for the other ones.
Right, yeah. So I guess you have sort of already experienced the whole stigmatism with
Hmm.
with just not having the straightforward comp sci path, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I guess, when someone is so early in their career, do you often compare yourselves to other counterparts of the same people in your current uh, progression, or do you just sort of just think of yourself and your own progression?
So I can illustrate that point actually, because for the grad scheme, there's two other grads that are starting alongside with me, and one of them is clearly a lot better than me. And I'm not too sure on his like past experiences. Maybe he's had like three jobs, maybe he's had none. But at the start of like the grad scheme, yeah, he was just like way ahead. I could tell he was like a much better developer. Like he was just sort of shining. And that does naturally kind of make you feel a little bit bad. It's just gonna happen because he's better than you. But the important thing is to just kind of not let that get you down. Just reminding yourself to stick to your own pace. Just try your best. That's all that matters. And at the end of the day, I can see that I am making progress, even if it's not quite as fast as the other guy. I'm still learning. I'm still sort of helping. I'm still playing my part. So yeah, it's important to kind of if you do sort of get down by that kind of stuff, to just kind of remind yourself that's okay to feel those things, but also, you're doing good yourself also. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, that is exactly the kind of perspective you want to have, I think it's so easy to be discouraged
Yeah.
for those that are better than you, but essentially you don't know their past,
Mm.
maybe they actually do have more experience and that explains it all, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's interesting overall in your current career. And just for reference for everyone, Honor has essentially transitioned as a developer quite recently. So this was over the course of around a year and a half or so, right? So, for those that are feeling discouraged and at the same point, you can reach at this point of, becoming a developer. So there's no reason to feel down about that. Um,
For sure.
so I guess as a final message, or if you need, if you want to shill anything or just share a message, what would you be willing to share with everyone today?
For just anyone that might find themselves in the same shoes that I was in, a year and a half ago, don't give up, believe in yourself, and just yeah, just keep marching on. I think that's the most important thing that I can say of anything is just do not give up. Um, you have to just kind of believe in yourself. I think if you just stick to that, eventually something's gonna land. Just eventually it has to. Just keep sort of improving on yourself, working on yourself, and it just will happen. Um, yeah, don't give up.
Cool. And that has been Honor on episode 3 of Coder Sprint. Thanks very much, Honor, and hopefully we have some more guests, for the next few episodes. Thanks all, and see you later.